Welcome back. We're going into round 3 of our Legacy League with Blue-White Delver. We're against Ireland King, and we are on the draw. Our first 2 rounds went by pretty quickly, thankfully, so we'll definitely, hopefully end this league early. We played against we played against Nickfit round 1, and it was kind of difficult to ascertain which variety of of Nickfit that it was. And round 2, we won a close one against Eldrazi, to be sure. So this hand has Flusterstorm, Brainstorm, Daze, Brainstorm, and Stoneforge Mystic, and this is absolutely a totally reasonable keep. It's on the slower side as far as threats are concerned, but I think it's totally fine. Ancient Tomb once again. Alright, our opponent also kept 7, which means we're likely going to be facing off against a Chalice of the Void. Yep. Nothing we can do about that. So 2 Chalice decks will hopefully allow me to evaluate how powerful the proactive plan of this deck is in comparison to the reactive plan of Miracles against a significantly more hostile field. Eldrazi once again, I suppose. Alright, well, we don't really have a good plan against this Thought-Knot, and I don't anticipate... I think I'm gonna go ahead and take this just because we can't kill it. And our threat isn't actually that good regardless, so we'll go ahead and play this island out once again. Chalice of the Void is an extremely powerful magic card, so most of our hand is turned off and we're kind of just hoping to draw... well, we're hoping our opponent doesn't kill us very quickly here. Basic waste is good to know about. That means the path to Exile on our sideboard is somewhat worse. Although likely we'll be bringing it in regardless, so that doesn't matter that much. Reality Smashers. Let's see. We have no way of killing this outside of Council's Judgment, which means we need to draw both a white source and the actual card Council Judgment before this kills us, and this is going to hit us for 10 at least. Yes. So there could be something to be said depending on what our draw step is. If we don't draw either a white source or Judgment, okay, so we drew the white source, that means I suppose we continue playing. Well, I wanted to attempt to possibly hide information by just playing the Stoneforge Mystic, or not playing anything and conceding. But in theory, we have an out in our deck still, so I will play towards that out. We're going to go get Batterskull. The most dangerous thing our opponent can do next turn is likely to play a Thought-Knot or another Smasher. Another Smasher means we have no outs. Thought-Knot is tough but beatable. I am not blocking. Walking Ballista for 2. Okay. We'll take 4 from the Smasher the following turn. But in theory, once again, we still have the out. Oops. I actually made a mistake this turn. I should have played the second island. Due to the fact that in case they did play Wasteland, they could waste us off the second white source, meaning it cuts off the out in our deck. We will block, take 4, go to 6. and hope our opponent, I'm not sure. They're continuing to have spells in their hand, so. Do we have outs still? Yes, so absolutely we still do. If we draw the Council Judgment this turn, I think we're definitely still in this game. Just off the back of True-Name Nemesis. Judgment. Scalding Tarn, okay. So we can block here still. Take 5. Alright. So since we still have technically an out in our deck, and our opponent, there's no use in hiding information as our opponent knows most of the contents of our hand. They know we're on a blue-white strategy of some sort, and I'm playing a Daze, so that precludes them to think I have a Delver in my hand, or in my deck rather. We'll block here. And our out, once again, is drawing our 1 of Council Judgment. Search the Spycast, that resolves. They'll see the Scalding Tarn. That's really not anything they need to worry about. So, just to note for sideboarding, we see Walking Ballista, Basic Waste, and like main deck Spyglass. Jace the Mind Sculptor, that is a completely reasonable name. Daze means that we unfortunately have lost. Alright. So, I think we'll learn from our past mistakes in sideboard a little bit differently than I originally did in our first pre-board game. And we're going to side out these Nivmagus Elementals and these Flusterstorms. For Engineering Explosives, 2 copies of Meddling Mage, Disenchant, and Path to Exile. It's possible the Meddling Mage is not good enough, but I want to try the additional disruption. Snapcaster Mage might be better in place of one of them, and I'm definitely willing to believe that. So we're going to try it this way. Yeah, let's give this a whirl. Another thing that we're not playing in this sideboard, as our opponent finish up sideboarding themselves, is copies of Back to Basics, which would obviously be great in this matchup. But a lot of the time, Back to Basics kind of requires a lot of your own mana setup. I'm going to keep this hand. It has a lot of spells, but it kind of dies to a Chalice of the Void, though if we draw another land, we have an answer to it, so I'm willing to definitely keep this hand. Our opponent also kept 7, so in the interest of not immediately losing on the spot to a Chalice of the Void on turn 1, I'm considering either Delver or Ponder on turn 1, and I kind of lean towards Ponder to find an additional land in case they do have a Chalice of the Void. I wouldn't normally do that, but the danger of that card is so high that... okay, these are fantastic. So I definitely want it. Our Delver's not going to flip, unfortunately, but other than that, we have a True-Name Nemesis available in the following turn. And I want the Wasteland sooner rather than later. So what I'm going to do is put the Plains down first, then the Wasteland, and draw the Tundra. So our Delver's not going to flip if we are able to cast the next turn, but if we have to disenchant, then we'll disenchant, of course. Although I'm definitely open to not doing so if it leads to us to Wastelanding being meaningful disruption. Thorn of Amethyst, that's fine. So that means our spells themselves are going to be somewhat taxed, but what that does not mean, however, is that... So this Delver is probably not going to do anything this game, just by an unfortunate byproduct. I am going to kind of fire from the hip here and take this Wasteland trade. Them playing a Thorn means that they can't play a Chalice this upcoming turn as well. So that's somewhat meaningful. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and play the second Tundra so that they're not incentivized really to Wasteland. And I'll go ahead and play the Delver of Secrets. If they play a Thought-Knot Seer now, that means that they're incentivized to take one of these two cards. Okay, so they have plenty of mana. Okay, no plays. That's good for us. Now we also get to see if our Delver flips, because 1 damage I don't think is incidental enough to actually matter. Let's see. Revealing to Brainstorm. Excellent. Absolutely. I will keep that. So I'm just going to go ahead and attack. If they dismember, that's fine. I want them with as little decisions as possible, or as little information as possible when making their decisions. Okay, great. So I'm going to go ahead and just deploy this as a threat. Oh, oops. Did I tap for white mana on accident? I must have. I'll deploy this as a threat. If they have a Smasher or something along those lines, we have it covered. Scary. So they have enough mana for a Smasher. They have enough mana for a multitude of very scary things, but we have the board at the moment. And that's kind of another big difference, is that you usually have control over the table, and you're forcing your opponent to kind of play into the table a lot of the time. Endbringer is totally fine. That card doesn't actually have any text on it right now. Again, if we didn't have an answer to it, that may be a different story, but we do. If we draw a land here, and I think I'm going to just Judgment it away, rather than use my more mana efficient answers, just due to the fact that I want to be able to double spell in subsequent turns later on. And if our opponent draws a Chalice of the Void, then that's all. I mean, that is scary for sure, but a cutting away life as well, I think, is very meaningful here. Sure. They have to attack. So they die next turn. They definitely die next turn, actually. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Can I Brainstorm as well? In theory, I suppose, but what I'm going to do instead is take care of the Ivu again. I will Brainstorm, just due to the upside being, if I hit a fetch, then all is well. I'm going to put back this True-Name. I'll put back this True-Name and this Stoneforge. No, I'm going to put back both of these True-Name Nemesis and use... Do I have to? 1, 2, 3... No, I don't have to. I don't have to plow. That's what I'm trying to get at, basically. So, assuming my opponent does not draw a removal spell, I do not believe they have any outs in their deck, actually, to our board state here. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 mana. They can't meaningfully interact with anything I'm going to do. So I'm going to go ahead and just play a Stoneforge Mystic. Be mana efficient. I don't really care for the true names on top of our library. And I'm going to go ahead and get a Jitte. I don't believe our opponent has any outs. Delver and True-Name are very potent threats against Eldrazi. Delver specifically. True-Name, of course, sometimes comes online too late, but together they work. They do quick work. All right, so we won this game. They had no outs in their deck, as far as I'm aware, at least. So, I don't think I wanted to change how we sideboarded. I like kind of the numbers that we're at. The Nivs are just not good enough in non-spell-based matchups, and that's kind of where we are. It's only really good if we get it underneath the Chalice of the Void, but that's very unlikely to happen. So I'll go ahead and keep here. The one Meddling Mage, I don't know if it's correct, but I like it better than most of the cards in our sideboard. It can pitch cast a Force of Will, and it can also help cut out his outs if we're putting on pressure, which I think is somewhat important to keep in mind. Meddling Mage kind of scales very well with the more format knowledge that you have. Well, we haven't answered our Chalice of the Void. We have meaningful interaction otherwise, so I'm going to keep. But if our opponent chalices or plays a Thorn, it's very dicey. But in most cases, they usually have one of those two cards. Ratchet Bomb is likely the least threatening out of all of those, so I'm definitely happy with that as the start. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and just fetch a Tundra and cast a Ponder. We have double Daze, which is not great. I'm going to keep this just due to the fact that we want the second land and the Ponder for more filtering. So plow down this and then this. No. Again, we're looking for a True-Name Nemesis or an additional source of pressure. Okay, so no plays. That means these days are actually going to be somewhat good. That's fine. They forgot to charge up the Ratchet Bomb at the end of my turn, which I don't think is actually going to be that relevant. I'm going to go ahead and cast this Brainstorm now in hopes of finding exactly these cards, actually. I don't think I'm going to worry about the explosives yet. Oh, that could be incorrect. Let's think about this. Do I want the second Daze? I definitely want to play the Delver this turn. And the question is if I want the Plows or the Dazes, or the explosives. And I think the explosives is probably going to be not meaningful enough. So I'll go ahead and take this out. The Delver is also important in that it kind of creates a force play for this Ratchet Bomb. Our opponent also having 2 Intertombs is somewhat painful, so that's something to keep in mind as well. Chalice of the Void. Oof. That is definitely a problem. Yeah, that's actually one reason to have kept the explosives, in fact. Come to think of it, but hindsight is 20/20. I did not realize, it did not compute to me that these Ancient Tombs means that these Dazes are actually going to be somewhat dead, especially if they continue doing cheap threats. Which is very unfortunate, to be sure, but there's no way around us doing that now, unfortunately. Wasteland, no, I would not like to reveal, but I will happily Wasteland them. Again, we're kind of at a series of force plays here. Okay, so they pop this. We'll play the Stoneforge Mystic. Yes, we'll use the ability, and we'll go ahead and fetch up Batterskull. Now, if they play another Soul Land and then have a Thought-Knot Seer, then we're going to be in trouble. But if they have one, we can beat it. That's also scary. But this means that if they use this now, we can Daze it. Alright, we're still going to Daze this. It's a very painful mana base they have going on there. Alright, well, 3 Dazes is quite a bit. That might be enough to get us a win here. We'll see. These plows are not looking great, of course. So I'm going to respond by putting this Batterskull in. And then Dazing again. These Ancient Tombs are also going to lock them out very quickly. So we'll attack for 5. And this Daze is gonna hopefully get us to the finish line here. We'll see. It's the only thing we have going on, so if they cast a spell, they die, essentially, due to these Ancient Tombs being a very painful mana base. Wow, alright. Well, that's a match win there as well. Excellent. We'll be back for round 4 here shortly.